Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. As you can see by the title, this is another discussion video, and this time around all about poetry. What poetry means to us poetry readers, but especially what it means to me. As you can maybe tell by the quote in the title, what will your first be? This video is inspired by the Dead Poets Society, the film Dead Poets Society, but also and most importantly by this collection of poetry. It's Rainer Brambach's, I was trying to say his name in English, but that's not working. Rainer Brambach's collected poetry. I've read the German edition, obviously, as he is a Swiss-German author, but there is also a translated version of his poetry, which I will link down below. So this is another one and another new favorite poetry collection of mine, and this prompted me to think about the main aspects of why poetry is a great tool of writing and transporting emotions, but also why poetry means so much to me personally. So I've wrote down some points, that's why I will not drop the books but look down sometimes. I wrote them down here. I will also mention some poems that work as an example for my point. I will read them in German as I didn't find the translation that works, but I will explain to you what I've said. But I thought it would also be nice for you to actually hear me read a little bit in German if that's something you're interested in. So my first point is that poetry is a great tool of writing about memories and sharing personal memories and experience with each other, with the reader, and collecting them for ourselves. So the poem I want to show that to you, how a poem is oftentimes a reflection of a personal experience and works on a brighter or a wider sense for a larger audience, but is also a way of collecting memories for ourselves. And this poem is called Freunde, which is translated into friends. I will read it in German, and then I will tell you what it is about and how I think this works well as an example. Freunde, dieses Hemd, das ich trage, gab mir Willi. Den Pullover brachte Ulea an einem kalten Tag. Die Hose mit den 4 Taschen hat Claire gestiftet. Werners Poesie lässt mich glauben. Die Schuhe kamen von Max. In ihnen gehe ich dauernd auf uns zu. So this tells or gives you a list almost of items the author, or seemingly the author, Rainer Brambach, got from his friends. The first line we have like a button up he got from his friend Willi, a sweater he got from his friend Ulea, trousers he got gifted by his friend Claire, the poetry by his friend Werner, and the shoes from his friend Max. And it could work as a personal experience for you as a reader. You can get yourself into the poem as well, but with this or these very specific names, it's also very clearly a memory and an experience from the author, and therefore poetry is also sometimes reflective of the life of an author, and not even sometimes, but most of the times. And life is the largest experience for writing poetry, in my opinion. My next point is that, or I want to discuss more like the poetry and poetry as a work of translated fiction, and does poetry work in translation, or is poetry a statement and staple of a certain language? Is poetry working when it is translated? Because there are certain turns of words and phrases that maybe work only in one language, or there are specific terms, and for that I choose another poem which is called Hasenathletik, which basically translates into rabbit athletics. So I'll read it to you and then explain what I mean by that. Mein Name ist Lampe. Man nennt mich auch Langohr, den großen Sprinter. Mein Hasenherz bebt, wenn auf der Feldbahn der Schuss kracht. Der Startschuss ins Jenseits. So this is about a rabbit hearing like the sound of a gun going out, trying to hunt him down, and like how he reflects on the possibility of being shot dead. And it starts with the sentence, Mein Name ist Lampe. And this is a common phrase and widely known in the German-speaking parts. Lampe is a synonym for a rabbit. So this is a very specific term, and the whole idea of the poem builds around this term, Lampe, for rabbit. So I wonder, how does it work as a translation? Is it working when you say my name is rabbit, or does it lose some of its impact? And I know that this is not only happening with poetry, but also other translated works of fiction. But I think with poetry there's so much weight on the words used and how they flow and how they rhyme with each other, that I wonder if and how well poetry in translation works. So I was really glad that I'm able to read Brambach's poems in German. Definitely let me know your opinion on that in the comments down below. My last point for this discussion is poetry as a way of connecting. As I said, life is one of the biggest influences on poetry, and the ability to share your experience through your poetry is one of the aspects that is mostly talked about when we talk about poetry, and oftentimes it's the hard part of our life we share with our poems. It's the suffering, love and heartbreak and the hard work. There's a lot of poems in this collection that focus on the tough work Brambach did in his life and observed others do. So there's a lot of that in there. Naturally, also the joys of life, especially the small ones, but it's always in connection with a darker side, and the joys of life shining through the darkness. And I think this is what poetry personally means to me. I started writing poetry to have an outlet for my thoughts and my feelings during darker times. Now I write poetry because I can't do without that, but I started out as bringing the light through poetry into the darkness I was feeling at the time. So this is like a very personal aspect, and it's also very personal as a collection because this is obviously curated by someone, and even how a person chooses to collect poetry is really interesting and really personal. I really enjoyed that there were quite a few poems after each other, and there's a collection that used all the theme and the tone of sarcasm, and they all had this connection and it really flows well. So even that is personal, how you want your own collection published, but also how others collect your poetry. So yeah, this is just a quick discussion on what poetry means to me and how I want to express myself through poetry. And again, the title quote, "What will your first be?" is always a motivation, and Dead Poets Society means a lot to me and meant a lot to me during a time where I tried to find my voice in my writing. I unfortunately am now not able at the moment to watch Dead Poets Society because it's just it would hit me too much, and I'm like not in that state of mind right now to watch it, but eventually I will go back and rewatch it 1,000 times because it meant a lot to me while finding my voice and my place in my writing. Yeah, definitely let me know if you have watched Dead Poets Society, if you have read some Brambach, if you will in the future, and if you read poetry, what poetry means to you, and if you write poetry, why you choose this format of writing to express your feelings and thoughts. Yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for discussing this topic with me, and I will see you in another video. Bye!